Ken, I'm sorry that I was a few minutes late. We are working all across Ohio these days, and that's what you do at this point in the year. You know me as the state treasurer, and I was here before you 2 years ago running for state treasurer. I certainly at that time did not anticipate, I don't think anybody anticipated that we would have a vacancy in this office in a special election this year. It's regrettable that we did. The circumstances that led to the vacancy do no credit to anyone. I will say that at least when the problems arose in that office and they surfaced in a more tangible way with the issuance of the internal investigation report on that Friday. And Mark Dan had a press conference that day in which he attempted to explain or excuse what had happened. The governor, I, and several other state officials were dismayed, outraged at what we had seen. We met repeatedly over the course of that weekend, and by Sunday night we sent a letter issuing an ultimatum to Mark Dan that he would either resign or he would face impeachment led by Democrats. Some people have criticized us for acting too hastily. Some people have criticized us for acting too slowly. We did what we thought was the right thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do to a fellow state official, a member of your own party, but we thought it was the appropriate step to take, and we did that. And he did resign, and that leads to the vacancy and the special election this year. I'm now a candidate for Attorney General, and what I want you to know about me is my record as treasurer is one where I believe I went in and did what I said I was going to do, which was we had to clean up after the financial scandals in state government. There was kind of a mess in state government. If you remember that campaign, it was about the rare coin investments and hundreds of millions of dollars lost at the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. And I understood my job was to settle down state government, give people confidence again that we could manage their money carefully and conscientiously, which we have done in the Treasury. We have kept Ohio's money safe during turbulent times on Wall Street. We did not invest in any of the mortgage-backed securities that have cost some of our state governments. Florida in particular lost over $2 billion in mortgage-backed securities. We have had none of that. We've had no losses, no problems. So I'm proud of that record. We also did things in that office that I think are germane to what I would do as Attorney General to continue cleaning up the mess there. And I should start by saying the Attorney General, who has been in there for 6 months, 5 months now, 4.5 months, whatever it has been, I think has made great strides at putting the office back on track. I think a lot of the problems started to solve themselves when certain individuals walked out the door of that office. But Nancy Rogers is someone I have known for a long time. She was the associate dean and then the dean at Ohio State Law School, where I taught for 15 years. And she definitely has restored professionalism and a sense of order to that office. I will continue to build on that work. The investigations are not done. There are certain problems that have not yet been resolved. They're in mediation over a couple of them, for example. We will complete that work. But as treasurer, I did things like we created an internal audit section in our office that has free reign of the Treasury. It can go anywhere at any time and make spot checks, surprise checks to make sure policies and procedures are being followed. I will do the same thing in the Attorney General's office, and that was actually one of the recommendations I saw in the Rogers, Judge Duncan report, which I think is a good basis for building on going forward. We instituted mandatory annual ethics training and background checks for employees. Those are things I think make sense in a government office, particularly an office like ours that handles money, but also in an office that enforces the law like the Attorney General's office. I also have a long background as a lawyer, and that's something that would not necessarily be known to people who know me as the treasurer. I've been an attorney since 1987. I graduated from the University of Chicago Law School, was the editor of the Law Review there. I clerked for 2 U.S. Supreme Court justices, one Democrat, Justice White, one Republican, Justice Kennedy. I returned to Ohio, worked for 5 years at one of the state's major law firms, Jones Day, Revis and Pogue. I served in the legislature, so I've made the laws that the Attorney General's office enforces. I served as the first state solicitor in the Attorney General's office, so I've actually worked in that office. I'm the only candidate in the race who's actually worked in the Attorney General's office. And my position was one where I handled some of the toughest cases in the office before the U.S. Supreme Court and the Ohio Supreme Court. And I worked with lots of different areas of the office on their cases that went to those levels. After I left the state solicitor position, I was in private practice. I was teaching at Ohio State's law school all during this time, constitutional law and government classes, legislative process, things like that. In private practice, I was appointed especially by the Clinton Justice Department twice to argue cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, personally argue on behalf of federal law enforcement officials. I then was appointed twice by the new Bush Justice Department to handle 2 more cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. One was on behalf of former Secretary of State Warren Christopher and former National Security Council head Tony Lake. There were issues that come up, lawsuits that had arisen out of their conduct of foreign policy. And then there was another case on behalf